I'm from supervisor. Oh, hold on, here it is. Oh, it's being live streamed. Hello, Dan. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
Hello, Dan. It's Tony from Supervisor Canopa's office. Just testing the audio.
You are loud and clear to the moderator. How are you?
Excellent. Hey, thank you so much. It's just Tony. I'm just testing his audio before the meeting. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Dan, can you hear me? It's a test in the EOC.
You are loud and clear, Dan.
Thank you, sir.
Are you guys telling me there's no food? Is Rico there?
Yes, I am. Dan Belleville?
Yes, sir.
Is it 5:30 or
Yes, sir. It's 5:30, Mr. President. We can get started.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Let me welcome you to the San Mateo County Department of Emergency Services Management Emergency Service Council meeting of September 16th, 2021. With that, may I have a roll call, please?
Atherton. Belmont.
Davina Hurd, present.
Thank you. Brisbane. Burlingame.
Ann O'Brien, present.
Thank you. Colma.
Diana Colvin, present.
Thank you. Daly City. East Palo Alto.
Lisa Gaucher, present.
Thank you. Foster City.
John Freeman, present.
Thank you. Half Moon Bay. Hillsborough.
Marie Zhuang, present.
Thank you. Menlo Park. Millbrae. Pacifica.
Here, Sue Botterloss.
Thank you. Portola Valley.
John Richards here.
Thank you. Redwood City.
Lisa Espinosa Garnica, here.
Thank you. San Bruno.
Rico Medina, present.
Thank you. San Carlos.
John Dugan here.
Thank you. San Mateo. Woodside. South San Francisco. The County of San Mateo.
I apologize, Half Moon Bay is here.
Marie, can you hear me?
Yes,
you.
Anne.
Just got South Half Moon Bay.
Nobody went back.
Okay, it's not just me then.
Great. With that, San Mateo County is here. That brings us to item 2, council member remarks. At this time, are there any remarks? If so, please raise your hand. And I do see in the chat box from Sue Botterlos, we can hear you, which is correct. And so with that, are there any members who would like to speak? If so, please raise your hand virtually. Seeing none, that brings us to item 3, which is public comments. Are there any public comments, Mr. Clerk?
We have no speakers cards.
Great. And no written comment, I would assume, correct?
That is correct.
Mr. President, it's Dan Belleville. May I make a comment, sir?
Yes.
2 things. First, we do have a quorum with 12 people, so we are able to proceed tonight. And if I may, I'd like to introduce a couple of newcomers. We have Dina Gunning from Central County Fire, who is our new president of the Emergency Managers Association, San Mateo County. She replaces Ken Anderson, who did a fine job in our previous past. Also joining us is Peter Cruz with County Council. Peter has replaced David Silberman. There's been an adjustment in terms of responsibilities at County Council, so would like to thank David Silverman for his terrific work. He was a pleasure to work with while I was here. And now we have Peter, and Peter is here and ready. I've already briefed him. Peter's been with the county a number of years and is also lives in the county with his family. So we're pleased to have him and welcome him to join the family of our activities here at the Department of Emergency Management.
All right, great. I want to welcome Peter. So with that, is there any additional public comment, any written public comment? There is none. Item 4, action to set the agenda. Is there a motion on the table to set the agenda?
So moved, Espinosa Garnica.
Okay. With that, can we have a roll call, please?
Atherton. Belmont.
Aye.
Brisbane. Burlingame.
Aye.
Colma.
Aye.
Daly City, East Palo Alto,
Aye.
Foster City,
Aye.
Half Moon Bay,
Aye.
Hillsborough,
Aye.
Menlo Park, Millbrae,
Aye.
Pacifica,
Aye.
Portola Valley,
Aye.
Bruno,
Yes.
San Carlos,
Yes.
San Mateo, Redwood City,
Yes.
South San Francisco, Woodside, County of San Mateo.
Yes. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 5, which is the approval of the minutes of the June 17th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to
So
approve.
moved.
Second.
Okay, can I have a roll call, please?
Atherton, Belmont,
Aye.
Brisbane, Burlingame,
Aye.
Colma,
Aye.
Daly City, East Palo Alto,
Yeah.
Foster City,
Would it be reasonable to add that Foster City arrived late at that meeting? As opposed to absent?
are you not reflected on the minutes?
I don't believe so.
I can make that adjustment.
It's hard to know when we're on Zoom when somebody comes in, so, but I, as corrected.
So noted. Thank you, sir. Half Moon Bay,
Aye.
Hillsborough,
Aye.
Menlo Park, Millbrae,
Aye.
Pacifica.
Aye.
Portola Valley,
Yes.
San Bruno,
Yes.
San Carlos,
Yes.
San Mateo, South San Francisco, Redwood City,
Yes.
Woodside, County of San Mateo.
Yes. With that, the motion's approved. Let's move on to item 6, the disaster service worker presentation. Mr. Belleville and Mr. Halloran. Mr. Belleville.
Thank you, President Canaba. Welcome to this evening's presentation, Vice President Medina and members of the Emergency Services Council. I'm joined by Don Matei to my right and Tony Blackman, Battalion Chief with San Mateo Consolidated. We'll be doing several presentations this evening. The first presentation includes some information related to the Disaster Service Worker Program, or the DSW program. Essentially, there are two sides to this. There's the government side and there's the volunteer side, the BP program. And we'd like to have Pat Halloran from San Mateo Consolidated present some work that has been done over the last couple of years and seek your input or thoughts about it. And he'll also be joined by Dina Gunning, who, Dina, I think it's fair to say you've been about neck deep in disaster service worker activities. So Pat, why don't you go ahead and take it away and share what we have to present tonight.
Thank you, Dan. Chair Canepa and members of the Emergency Services Council, I'm appearing before you today to ask you to consider a resolution dealing with the disaster service worker status of certain volunteers in San Mateo County. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the people who worked with me on this project. Dina Gunning from Central County Fire, Sandra Firpo from San Mateo Consolidated Fire, Andreas Azevedo from the Menlo Park Fire Protection District, and Jeff Norris from the San Mateo County Department of Emergency Management. In the way of background, the California Disaster Service Worker Volunteer Program dates back to World War II, when the state needed and trained and officially recognized volunteers to assist during emergencies. The state also realized that such volunteers needed to be covered by workmen's compensation benefits and provided with qualified immunity while performing these duties. These volunteers are required to be registered with their program and to be sworn in as disaster service workers. The Governor's Office of Emergency Services administers this program, and appropriation for the program is approved by the legislature annually out of the state's general fund. There is no cost to local governments to use this program. There are Cal OES and FEMA registered CERT programs throughout San Mateo County. CERT was born in the late 1980s in the Los Angeles Fire Department to train members of the public in skills that could be used during a disaster. Since that time, CERT has developed into a nationwide program and also a deployable resource. Over the years, CERT volunteers have been deployed to San Mateo County member jurisdictions for various missions such as winter storms, emergency shelter operations, search and rescue supporting the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue Unit, COVID-19 testing and vaccination centers where they provided traffic control and support services, and also assisting at large-scale emergency training exercises with first responders. Recent events such as the CZU fire and the pandemic have shown that opportunities for CERT mutual aid will continue to grow. Under current circumstances, despite the fact that the CERT members are sworn in as disaster service workers in their home jurisdictions, CERTs must be resworn in by the jurisdictions to which they respond, unlike other first responders. This causes delays in deployment and additional administrative work. The resolution we are asking you to consider is based on a similar resolution approved at your December 2019 meeting, which was at that time specific to the coastside CERT programs. By approving this new resolution, you will do the following. You will grant authorized designee status to specific Emergency Service Council member agency staff, specifically emergency managers, CERT program coordinators, or fire service or law enforcement command staff to administer a DSW oath to their CERT members. You will also ensure that properly sworn and registered CERT members, their DSW status will be recognized by all jurisdictions within our county when mutual aid is sent or received. This resolution only applies inside San Mateo County if our CERTs for some reason were deployed to say the Dixie Fire or another large disaster. They would still have to be sworn in by those jurisdictions when they arrive. But the resolution before you will enhance the ability of CERT volunteers to support emergency responses inside our own county. And that is the summary of our resolution.
Thank you very much. Before we take any member questions, are there any comments from the public?
There are none.
There are none. Okay, thank you so much. Why don't we go to Mayor Schneider? Ms. Schneider.
Thank you, Supervisor. All in favor of this. I am a sworn CERT member from Millbrae. Will this also involve additional IDs? Because when we first got sworn in, we then went through a whole other process with identification to be worn when we're called out.
No, as long as say, for example, if there was an incident in San Mateo and they requested a CERT assistance from Millbrae, as long as they made the official request and the Millbrae CERT personnel responded to San Mateo, they would be recognized upon their arrival. They'd use the same IDs. Like I said, this resolution applies just within the geographical boundaries of San Mateo County and allows for in-county mutual aid.
Okay, I still, if we needed San Mateo, for example, and they showed up at City Hall, how would we know that they have been sworn in to be countywide?
Well, all of the CERT members in the programs in San Mateo County are already sworn in by their respective jurisdictions.
I understand, but you're asking them and us and me to get sworn in at an additional layer, which I support. But how then would we know? Would it be a requirement that every local CERT be sworn to the county level? Maybe that's another way of putting the question.
No, actually, this does not require, the advantage of this resolution is it does not require an additional swearing in. You are,
Okay.
by approving this, you're saying that San Mateo will accept the DSW status that Millbrae conferred upon their volunteers.
Okay, I'm
Right
sorry, I was
now-
confused. I thought there was an additional swearing in step. The resolution does it all automatically. Got it.
Right, and that is because the Emergency Services Council is the accredited disaster council for the entire county. Right now, that situation that you described does exist where they would have to be resworn in, which if you can imagine during an emergency or if you're trying to set up a shelter, adds an additional layer of bureaucracy and wastes time that you may not have.
Mhm. Thank you.
Mr. Fruman.
Yes, thank you. So we're under the assumption that all CERT volunteers within the county are already sworn in within their communities as disaster service workers.
That is the practice at most, if not all CERT programs in this county. The ones that are issued ID cards, which I believe is all of them, it is noted on their card that they're sworn in as disaster service workers. And in a practical sense, none of our programs are going to deploy non-DSW sworn individuals to another jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Pardon me, Mr. Halloran. Can you hear me? This is Peter Cruz speaking.
Yes, sir.
Hey there. I just wanted to quickly clarify a statement you may have made. I just want to be clear that your presentation at this point is speaking to a proposed resolution. We're not adopting any resolution during today's meeting. That would occur at the subsequent meeting as far as a resolution pertaining to your presentation. So I just wanted to make sure there was no confusion about that point.
That's correct. That's correct, Mr. Cruz. As noted on the agenda, this is a presentation, and I do think in the next meeting we would take that as an action item appearing as a resolution. But thank you for the needed clarification on that. Thank you. Are there any additional questions from the members for Mr. Halloran and Mr. Belleville?
I have a question. Can you clarify who will be calling the other jurisdictions? Is it the city itself, the emergency services? Who will be making sure that they're placing the call for the assistance?
Well, during it would depend on essentially who's running the incident. So let's I'll give a hypothetical. If you had flooding in East Palo Alto and you had to do an evacuation and you needed more support, say at a shelter location, because many CERTs in this county, a great deal of them are shelter trained and have been used at shelters. The incident commander in East Palo Alto would call the Department of Emergency Management and say, we need CERT assistance for a shelter in East Palo Alto. The call would then go out over SMC alert, which has become the standard notification system for our CERTs, that there was a call out to East Palo Alto, and then the programs would provide personnel as they could. What we're allowing us to do is treat the CERTs like any other first responder or mutual aid. Firefighters, police officers, deputy sheriffs don't have to go through the extra administrative paperwork that's currently required for volunteers. This would help streamline that process.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Ms. Chuang.
Thank you, President. So I have a question for Patrick, and that is, for the CERTs, are we assuming that the CERT members that you're talking about are the ones who are issued with the ID, and the ID is going to provide them a certification of the DSW status, and also the coverage of the workers' comp and the insurance, the Good Samaritan's insurance coverage or something to that effect, so that when they're deployed, it's assumed that they are in that level that they they can function as to serve on the mutual aids or whatever the services is assigned to them.
Yes, on their CERT ID card, it would say that they're a disaster service worker. Also, our CERT coordinators group is very active in this county, and we meet on a monthly basis. And I can pretty confidently say that none of us would deploy CERTs that were not DSW sworn. And what this provides to them is, if the event that they were injured in while they were deployed, they could apply for workman's comp benefits through the state. It also provides them with a bit of qualified immunity, as long as they act within their training and the scope of their position.
So for the CERT, they need to verify with their CERT coordinator to make sure that they do have the proper IDs issues. So in case there's an emergency, they can be called upon, and
Yeah.
they are expecting to deliver the or volunteer the services.
Yeah, usually in a program, you have the people that are willing to be deployed, and then you have other people that are just want to have the CERT training for work in their own neighborhood or around their community. It's these deployable people that have already decided that they're deployable and that they cannot self-deploy. We always tell our CERTs, you can't self-deploy. So they have to be officially requested and officially activated, which allows them to be covered.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right, Ms. Vardalos. Sue.
My question is about the workman's compensation. Who covers the workman's compensation? Each individual location, or?
No, it's done through the state's disaster service worker volunteer program.
Okay.
It's funded by the state of California out of the general fund. There is no financial or fiscal impact to any of the jurisdictions in San Mateo County or anywhere else in the state that participate in this. It's a totally state-funded program. The only thing we'd have to worry about is submitting the correct paperwork.
Okay, thanks. I think they need it, so.
Yeah, because otherwise they're not covered at all, so.
Okay. Ms. Espinosa?
Hi. Yeah, I was curious, just how much is the payment for, or the compensation for volunteers? Is this, yeah, and when is it due to them and how regularly?
The compensation would be like any other workman's comp claim. They'd fill out the paperwork with the state. It would be filled out by so if, for example, San Mateo sends volunteers to San Bruno and the volunteer were to get injured, it would be responsibility of the San Mateo program to fill out the workman's comp paperwork for that volunteer. It would be then submitted to the state, and the state makes the determination on what they would pay. As I read, with normal workman's comp, the payment is made to the provider, the physician or whoever provided the medical treatment. Generally, I don't believe it's paid to the volunteer.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Great. Ms. Schneider, I see your hand up. Do you have a final question? You're on mute.
I went into my CERT Go kit and am looking at my pass here, which is not showing up on the camera. When this does come back to us in January to vote the resolution, perhaps the staff report could make sure that all of our CERT volunteer cards are identical. I just noticed mine is expiring the end of this year. So I've had this pass for about 4 years. I didn't know it expired. It does say that I am identified as a disaster service worker as defined by California Government Code Section 3100. So we might want to make sure that there's consistency across all the CERT programs. And I will report, well, if Ms. Jennings is here, a lot of Millbrae CERTs will probably need to get a new card. But just help the other people who haven't been through the CERT process understand what kind of identification we carry.
Yeah, there was a move several years ago. The CERT coordinators have general consistency. Like there has to be a clear identification that they are CERT members. and that they have disaster service worker, and that they're, we use the color for cert is green. So the ID cards usually have either they're green or have a good amount of green on them so that they're identifiable.
Yeah,
But we
as they
can-
do, and a photo.
Yeah, and a photo. And we can just ensure that across the programs. That's not a difficult thing.
And I believe that citation from the mayor was the government section side. Is that correct? And not the volunteer side? I don't know if you've heard that. We can clarify.
I can always take a couple of snaps and send it to you so that come January, we're all on the same boat.
Yep, that's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, will do.
Great. I want to thank staff for that presentation. And as noted, this is not an action item. That brings us to the next item, informational update on the status of EOC, DEM, Dan Belleville, DEM Director. Mr. Belleville.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we still continue to forge ahead here in the Emergency Operations Center. We're actually 1 year, 6 months, and 13 days straight in the EOC. I was actually hopeful that we could close things down in August, but with the rise in COVID and now the potential for booster shots, we will remain open indefinitely. So we do quite a bit of work, and in between the work dealing with COVID and some of the other emergencies, we thought we would share with you some of the things that are important to all of us in the county. And just, in the last 14 days alone, we've experienced a tsunami, not a potential tsunami from an earthquake up in Alaska. We had lightning strikes again. We continue to monitor the weather. Thankfully, we've had a lot of fog this summer, so that's really good news for all of us. But we are monitoring the very, very dry fuel conditions and working with CAL FIRE and the fire service to make sure that we're on our toes in the event of a sustained heat wave. So with that said, I'm going to move into the first of the 4 presentations for your information, and that is mass vaccination. So we are preparing again to open up our mass vaccination center at the event center. We are proposing that would open up on October 4th, and it would run through the 8th. That's Monday through Friday. The first 2.5 days would be setup and training, and the remaining days, the other half of the days, would be ramping up of a small scale vaccination to up to 2,000 a day. We still have to get alignment to the members of the board here that we have to get alignment with FEMA and the state before we can commence third shots or booster shots. And so there's a lot of controversy about that right now, but we are forging ahead and preparing for it should we get the green light to do that. So you will see the event center open up on October 4th if everything lines up and we do get the word from the federal government. We will also enter in off the Saratoga side, much like we did before. We were looking at a couple of configurations, one off of Delaware, but because of some shows and things that had to be canceled and some construction in the area, we are resuming the exact same model that we did months ago over at the event center. So with that said, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer regarding mass vaccination. And if not, I can move to the next item.
Are there any questions regarding mass vaccinations? Ms. Espinosa and then Mr. Fruman.
Oh, hi, hello. Hi, yes. I was just curious to know what ways are we making transportation or just making it accessible for folks who may not have vehicles to attend or go to these mass vaccination sites? I know that we've been having local government partner with nonprofits and such. But is there an expansion, since we've learned a lot from the first few trials? How are we making it accessible for people who live far away from these sites?
We certainly have. So we've done a considerable amount of outreach, and our clinics will remain open. We have a number of clinics throughout the county. This is coordination between HSA, the health department, the EOC, the CMO's office, the board of supervisors, and we do quite a bit of outreach to those folks that can't easily get to those locations. We identify who they are, we have lists of them, and we will make accommodations. Sometimes we can't make accommodations immediately, but we certainly address those problems. That's precisely what we do here. So we feel pretty confident that the things that we've done in the past have been pretty successful. We'll be able to repeat that same activity level going forward, and perhaps even better and more efficient.
Thank you.
Mr. Fruman.
Yes, thank you. is there any information that's come down with the guidance related to that? This is pretty quick. You know, a lot of other vaccinations and inoculations that kids get, you don't need boosters for several years. Do they feel that the third shot is going to be it, or do they feel that there's going to need to be boosters fairly regularly into the future?
Well, I think that's a lot of the controversy. Is there's a lot of debate about whether the shots that we've currently had, if you've had your 2 shots, hold up fairly well. And I think that's part of the debate. And we actually may see a delay from the federal government because of that controversy. Some people have resigned over frustration because of the actions that are being taken. Others feel it's absolutely essential because it is a deadly virus. So I don't really know the answer. I think it's just too much up in the air right now. And what we want to do is be ready. And in fact, today we got more information about vaccinations for the very young children, age 5 in that group. So we're going to have to deal with that as well. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but it's day to day for us, Mr. Truman.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hurt.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a quick question. I'm curious if you have the latest numbers on our county's vaccination rate, just to get a perspective.
I believe it's 92%, and it may be creeping up. Supervisor Canepa, you may have some more.
Yeah, I think you're close. I want to say it's 92.5, but 92, around 92, correct. For those who are able to get vaccinated. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
I believe those are pretty impressive numbers, around the state to be that high. So we're very proud of it. And I think that goes to the first comment about reaching out, having clinics and getting those folks that are hard to reach and working with them and using our CBOs to reach out and capture as many people as we can.
If I could just add one last comment, because we have just a small percentage who can get the vaccinations that we're still trying to hope come through the mass vaccination site. I hope we can really target, going to the earlier comment about making it accessible as best as possible and targeting and messaging to get folks to make it to the mass site so that it's not, that it's used, that all the energy is really for a good reason. We're reaching out 7.5%. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, Ms. Espinosa?
Yes, I just had another question. Knowing that vaccines have become more available to adolescents, is there any chance, or has there already been any work on school sites to get folks vaccinated? I was wondering if there's any else updates on potential vaccines for younger folks as well, because I don't think we have one yet.
Yes, in fact, there's someone from the health department is embedded into the EOC right behind where we're sitting here every day. And she was talking to me today about that very thing, the school districts and their responsibilities, vaccinated teachers and the children. So that conversation is underway. And I think I'd be remiss if I, pretended to know what all the details are and what the professionals think. We're here to furnish what it is in order to make sure that the vaccinations are carried out. But those conversations are taking place. As a matter of fact, we did have one earlier today on that very topic.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing that there are any additional comments, can we move on to Zone Haven evacuation training?
More hand raised.
Oh, Ms. Hurt?
Sorry, I didn't lower my hand.
No problem. If we can go to item B, Zone Haven evacuation training. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Item B is Zone Haven. Some folks have heard this name used a lot. It's a relatively new product. I believe San Mateo County was the first to employ it in the state. So we're very proud of it. When we were, I believe in the last meeting, we had mentioned that during the CZU fire, we activated evacuations literally within a couple of minutes or so using the Zone Haven maps, which is a coordinated effort for police and fire and first responders to identify sections of the county. It is a very, very impressive product. And what we'd like to do today is share with you some additional work related to Zone Haven, which includes evacuation and evacuation training. The one thing I think that the members should understand is in the fire service, suppression used to be the priority for most practical purposes. And what has replaced that now is evacuating, getting people out. And the reason why is because We all know the dry fuel conditions and primarily the wind conditions have changed. And fires are moving so fast now that evacuation always was important, but we seem to have had more time years ago than we do now. And so evacuation, coordination, using these technologies is far more important than it ever has been with regard to the speed with which fire is moving. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Battalion Chief Tony Blackman, who's helping us head that up with Don Matei and folks from around the county. Tony?
Thanks, Chair Canepa and Council. Jeff, you pulled up the slides? Perfect. So what we do here is, first of all, I just want to acknowledge all of our partners here that have been working with us, developing this planning, and that's from our public safety communications, law enforcement folks all around the county, fire departments, of course, right here, Department of Emergency Management.
Would have been gone home by now. I'm still on a board call.
Oh. Next slide.
If you can mute your mics, thank you.
So we're doing down here at the Department of Emergency Management, I want to talk about a few things we're working on to discuss and facilitate the issues concerning the operational area. So the operational area, of course, being the entire county. And what we've done is we've broken this up into separate regions and plans. So we're here to support and participate in the development of these regional plans. We're going to respond to the field as needed to support the incident commander. And what we've done on this plan here is we've broken this down into a 7-phase plan to prepare for evacuations. I'm not going to go through all 7 of them, but just let you know we're on approximately phase 4 of the 7 plan. We are working with all the local entities and starting over on the coast side and working our way over onto the bay side. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. But what we're doing is we're trying to just develop a whole plan. This is for the entire county. That's going to ensure we have evacuation for wildfires as well as tsunami. But we're focusing on the wildfire side of this right now. So what we're doing is we're pulling in participation from all the first responders on the county. And what I was trying to get to is we're starting off on the coast side, and the coast side we'll get to. I'll show you some maps here a little bit later, and working our way over to the bay side. So we're going to catch everybody in the entire county. Next slide, Jim. So this crazy map you're looking at right here, this started off right here in Office of Emergency Management. And what this is was just our ideas, our philosophical approach to this, of drafting up what we need to do in terms of how we're going to put together, get everybody on the same sheet of music for an evacuation. As Dan Bill was talking about, we have this fabulous product called Zone Haven that really helps us bring everything together, and it identifies every individual zone. And what we're trying to do is look at each individual zone that all of us have. Each one of our jurisdictions has multiple zones. And then we want to look at this a little more regional and of course at the whole county level. This is something that's happening all around the state and beyond. And the Zone Haven product, as we mentioned, first used here in this county, and it is spreading throughout all the western states and beyond. So with this plan, we're trying to start off with this philosophical approach. And then we're going to getting into the technical side of things, make sure we understand how the software program works, everybody's on the same page. And then we're going to bring in the reality of it all. We're going to exercise this plan. We're going to give it a full-scale exercise where we're going to be a hybrid of a tabletop and in the field, and it'll test out how this plan will work. And that'll give us additional feedback. And the upside is we've actually have seen this product used out in the field, both in this county and beyond. If you were to log on to Zone Haven right now, as a user, you could zoom out and you can see there's different zones throughout the state that are currently in an evacuation status, or they're in different statuses of warnings. Next slide, please. So overview, background, purpose, scope, and the plan limitations. So what we're doing here is we're trying to discuss the strategies for managing evacuations which can exceed the day-to-day capabilities of public safety agencies. So this is what we're talking about is a fire, not just a small brush fire or small fire that can handle. We're trying to look at something a larger scale where we're going to potentially go from one jurisdiction to easily can go into another jurisdiction and help us set up plans for evacuations. That's why we're including everybody in these conversations. And we're starting off here. We're starting off, like I said, on the coast side, working our way around, so to the bay side. So this plan, just to put this in perspective, this is an annex to the San Mateo County Emergency Operations Plan. And this plan is designed so everybody understands what we're trying to do, how we would proceed in a live event. And we just want to make sure everybody knows that this is not necessarily what's going to actually happen in an event. We're going to have to be able to call audibles and make adjustments on the fly. And that's why we have an incident commander, a unified command. And that's exactly how we handled it in the past. So next slide. So if you look at this slide here, this actually breaks it down into everybody's individual zones. So like I said, every jurisdiction, multiple zones. And if we were to click on one of these zones and open one of these zones, then it'll give you lots of information about that zone. It'll talk about how many population during the day, population during the night, how many vehicles we can expect that would leave that zone if we were to evacuate it, and additional information, schools, nursing facilities, that type of thing, institutions that we would have there. Talking about transportation earlier, a lot of people have their own vehicles. A lot of other folks would need special circumstances for evacuation. This will help us identify. So these are all the zones on the coast side. And for the purposes of this here, coast side from Pacifica, all the way down the coast to the border and including Portola Valley and Woodside. And these zones a little bit different than the other side on the bay side, based on the size of the roads, very limited. If you take a look, there's a little bit more limitations in terms of the highways and freeways and the service roads, secondary roads servicing that area. So next slide. So if you take a look at here, we've taken multiple zones, clustered them together, and put them into sectors. And based on these sectors, we can really take a big picture approach and take a look at this. This is Sector A, for example. This is up here in the city of Pacifica. And by lighting up all these zones, we can get an idea of how many vehicles and the population. You can take a look on that slide. It'll give you an idea. And this information comes from each local jurisdiction inputted this information into their zones. So you can see how the population, the vehicles and such over here. And if you opened up the evacuation pre-plan, it gives you even further detailed information. Next zone. So Sector B just takes us south of the tunnel, and that takes us from Montera all the way down to the harbor, all the way to the PUC, everything on the west side of 280. Same thing where it gives you the information of the population and such. So what we're doing is we're working with the individual law enforcement, local jurisdictions of these different sectors and creating plans of what would look like an event of a mass scale evacuation. And next slide. Sector C, again, just working our way further south, PUC, including all of Half Moon Bay proper and some unincorporated San Mateo County. Next slide. And then Sector D is working our way all the way down further south, all the way down to the county border. Again, a little more rural, smaller population, but there's a lot of local knowledge that we're soliciting from local government and law enforcement as well as down there as the fire department. And Sector E, next slide, please. And Sector E, tucked a little bit higher up on the hill, again, same type of concerns, a lot of population, a lot of homes, and limited ingress and egress of getting people in and out of these areas here. So these are the different sectors. This is how we're trying to put these things together. This is the beginning of our evacuation. As we get through these sectors here, these sectors will continue and move forward. This is, again, the coast side, and the remainder of the county, as we will determine as the bay side. And we'll do the same thing, working through the bay side. And as you can see, there's already identified zone haven zones through all the way out, and we'll have sectors identified, and we'll just keep working and fulfilling this whole plan all the way through the county. That's the end of the slides. Is there any questions?
Yeah, before we take questions, let me just say that Jonathan Cox and CAL FIRE, they had done a presentation to this board, really powerful presentation on zone haven. And as a board, I think we all sort of agreed to, that this was some good technology. Then the board took action, Supervisor Horsley and myself we're able to use taxpayer funds, which were Measure K funds, I think to the tune, you may want to correct me, Dan, to about $300,000 or $350,000. And I think what visually and viscerally struck me was when people had to go, or first responders had to go on these sites, they would literally have to put their binders out. There's a lot of moving pieces, and using technology, I'm convinced, I've talked to some of my counterparts in other parts of the state, that they're looking to adopt this technology. And so I think we should all take pride in knowing that we were the early adopters of that, and take pride in that. At the end of the day, this technology will save lives. So just want to recognize that, and we'll go to Ms. Schneider. Ms. Schneider.
Thank you. I'm only bringing this up because when I was speaking with One Shoreline, they were not aware that many of us on the Bay side, our communities have been added to the tsunami watch. So I was surprised when Millbrae was added to it, and I only found out in an article in the Chronicle. So when you do work around to our side, please remember that we now have to do tsunami work.
And we do have you. We're aware of that, and we do have you on our radar.
Excellent, thank you. And we had a Zone Haven presentation at our city council to our city, so I'm looking forward to when you're ready to work on our side.
Okay, we look forward to it as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Dugan or Mr. Duggan?
Mr. Dugan, thank you, David. San Carlos. And yeah, thank you for the overview. Looks like a great system. So glad we have that in place, and especially in this challenging time. My question is, what should our advice be to residents? I mean, do they need to actively create an account and register for notification? You know, how does this thing work from the end user perspective? You know, it seems like it's ideally suited for getting a real-time notices out to folks for evacuations, but just not sure how is contact information automatically populated in this thing? Do people have to register? If you could just speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, Mr. Dugan. So the first part of your question is, what can your residents do? Two things they can do. One is to open up Zone Haven and take a look at it and understand their zone, take a look at their zone, and they can see some of their hazards. And it's almost like we would teach people to know multiple ways out of your house in case of a fire, to try to identify multiple ways out of your zone in case of a fire. So to really learn and know your neighborhood. So there's some information on Zone Haven that can help out. The second thing they can do is they can sign up for SMC Alert. So if you have your residents sign up for SMC Alert, that will increase the efficiency of getting the identified zone when it goes into a evacuation or warning. It'll reduce the amount of time it takes to get a message to them. So they will just stay current in that regard. So as far as that technology that you were asking, does it automatically populate? There's a series of events that have to happen through our chain of events. And right now, there is a human piece to that chain of events to type messages up and put it in. But we are actually actively working on technology and updating our technology where some of that will become automated and happen a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient. So a lot of things are happening all at once through Zone Haven and our alert and warning system at the same time. They're going to work together and try to reduce this time to the absolute minimum. But one of the things about being the first to adopt Zone Haven is the first county is they look to us for feedback. So we've actually worked with them and made some modifications and some upgrades, and we've tweaked this program a little bit to make it work a little bit better for us. And that same use is being modeled throughout the state. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? Ms. Chuang.
Thank you, Chair. This is not a question, just a comment. I would encourage my colleague to sign up on to go to the Zone Haven and type in your own address, and you will know the zone for your city. In Hillsborough, we have 8 zones. And so our messaging has been to get out there and get our residents to at least know which zone that their address fall into. and to learn about the route to evacuate either toward 101 or toward 280. That is the minimum right now. And I believe that as a situation arises, there will be more information as it's being demonstrated on this slide deck that there are more information that can be placed on the public side of it that the residents will be able to find out for their own area.
And that's a great point. And to that point, if a resident of Hillsborough, if they always leave their neighborhood and go back and forth on Highway 280, that's their access all the time. It's just good to understand how maybe to get to 101, because that particular route may be blocked. It may be being used to have resources coming in. So to understand how to really know your zone is very important, especially a place like Hillsborough, where at night it could be dark and be a little confusing, and with the smoke and everything else that might happen. Just to really understand, know your zone so you know which way to go and get out. Can't emphasize that enough.
Thank you.
All right, Miss O'Brien, Mayor O'Brien.
Yes, my question is, I know that CCFD is going to be doing a presentation to the Burlingame Council on Zonehaven in October. And I wanted to know if this is actually going to be done with all the cities, because I think that would be quite beneficial for each city to have their own, presentation from you all, because you do a really good job with your presentations. And I think it would be very helpful information for everyone.
Yeah, and absolutely, Zonehaven has a presentation, and it is available for every city. I can't speak of every city council it has been presented to, but certainly available to have a presentation given to them. Absolutely.
It might be worth contacting the city so they know it is available if they choose to have you present.
We can do some reach out, Tony, if you can make a note of that. We could do some reach out, and for those that don't have it or are not as aware of it, that we can certainly try to blanket the entire county. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Schneider.
Thank you. I'm a tiny bit concerned if we I think it's a great idea. I've already gone and played around on Zonehaven for my house and for a number of the neighborhoods, and I think it's really cool. But when I talk to the public, I tell them to wait until they get their orders, because it was my understanding from the I just went blank, the fire up in Paradise, that a number of people in Paradise could not get down because the lower altitudes started evacuating, started clogging up the roads. And the whole is we evacuate the appropriate neighborhoods on the appropriate streets. And for all of us who are on the lowlands that have a freeway entrance, we are also going to be dealing with people leaving our mass transit zones and coming in and off the freeway. So I just caution that we get our public too used to just head to 101, because we may be having problems at 101 if this happens to be a flood or a tsunami or something like that. So I know when you came to Millbrae, we talked about that. It's that importance of don't just get in the way, be smart, get on SMC alert, wait for your zone to be called and stuff like that. So just a little bit nervous on that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And one thing to speak to that, Mayor, is
campfire. That was it.
The campfire, yes, and I responded on that campfire, and you're absolutely right. The evacuation played a major role in that. And one of the things is, if you look at these as individual zones, we can see how we can evacuate. And the reason we put these things into sectors, so we can see this thing on a larger scale. And if you were to look at a sector and see what it would look like evacuating out, using the coast as the model, for example, if we were to try to evacuate too many zones at one time, you're going to impact those limited amount of roads, Highway 1, 92, 84. And if you do the same thing in Millbrae, those lower elevation streets will be impacted greatly. So you're absolutely right. We tried to do this in a coordinated event, evacuate zones as needed, put them into, there's a whole method behind how we would do it. But getting on the front side of it and lighting up these zones and looking at it, we can see exactly how many vehicles that are anticipated to go through each individual intersection And then we can start thinking about how we would put different law enforcement officers to run those intersections and to help make things happen and to run things smoothly. There's also some counts that we try to determine how many vehicles can go down a particular road at a time and traffic patterns and such. So we're bringing in some of the experts of Caltrans, Public Works, and local law enforcement to help understand these patterns and to give some indicators. So when a fire or something happens to create an evacuation, we're doing just that. We're doing it in a manner that makes sense and we're not just clogging up all the roads. So it's a very, very valid concern and we're addressing it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll wrap up with Ms. Vaterlas.
I just want to thank you for starting at the coast because we do have lots of locations where there's one way in and one way out. And I just really appreciate it because usually we get everything last. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. President, just one other thought. You're right. I remember I was in the meeting with Chief Cox, hat in hand to your Board of Supervisors, and you helped fund this thing a few years ago, and we did activate it for CZU. It was very impressive. I think the beauty of this, I'm just going to call it part one and part two. Part one was purchasing the program and working with Zone Haven to develop it. Part two is what we're doing here today, working with CHP, Caltrans, police, fire, because a fast-moving fire, it requires multiple jurisdictions to respond. So when you have coordinated maps and coordinated zones, years ago, we had Thomas Brothers maps or our own private maps, and they were great if it was a small incident. But if you bring officers from all over the county to coordinate streets, you have to have a coordinated method. So that's what this does. And it ties in the residents. So everyone is working off the same sheet of music. And it's really an amazing product. Probably one of the most technological, most important technological pieces that we've seen in many, many years. So we're very happy with it.
Great, thank you so much. I think what we're going to do for item C, the alert and warning, Dan, if you wouldn't mind just sending out information on the signups, and then we'll move from alert and warning to item D, which is the heat, drought, and clean air, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Certainly. So in the matter of heat, then there are a number of things tied to it. Obviously, we're looking at fire risk, the dry vegetation, as I mentioned earlier, a sustained drought, and then our air, how it's impacted by many hot days with smoke drifting in from all over the state. So we just wanted to inform the council that we've been addressing a couple of these things. Obviously, we're monitoring the heat with CAL FIRE and the fire risk. With regard to the drought, we have initiated a drought task force. A couple of months ago, we had our first meeting with a cross section of folks from Public Works, various cities, the PUC. There's a number of different agencies that came together under one umbrella to discuss the concerns and impacts that we might get with a sustained drought. We have our second meeting on September 30th of this month, and we will continue to develop ideas and thoughts if the drought sustains and continues to impact our county and the state. So we are staying ahead of that should there be more significant impacts. Another one that just recently occurred was, Mr. Supervisor, you might care to chat about it. It's the approval of the air purifiers. Would you like to chat about that?
So I know Davina Hurt is on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, as well as Supervisor Groom. So what the board of Supervisors authorized on Tuesday was $100,000. That's my son in the background, by the way, for air filtration system. So Dan, I'll let you take it over from here. I have a kid who just came back home, so
that's quite all right. So the Board of Supervisors just this week approved an agreement between our department, the Department of Emergency Management, the County of San Mateo, for $100,000 grant from Bay Area Air Quality, and we will receive approximately 60 units, air purifiers, intended to clean up the air when we get an event like we had last year when there was so much smoke in the Bay Area, and again impacted us this year. And so we will be working with our Emergency Managers Association and distributing those air units once they arrive. And we will leave it up to the different jurisdictions and collaborate to see where they might be best suited. whether it's in PSPS cool replenishing facility, or what it best serves for clean air, maybe those that are most compromised. So we'll develop those pieces in the coming weeks. And we believe that the $100,000 grant will buy about 60 units that we've been told are about the size of a dorm refrigerator. So they're pretty substantial units, bigger than a house unit, and they should be able to serve a building that serves a number of people. So we're looking forward to that having been approved this week and actually receiving those units fairly soon, and probably start the distribution process within a month or so.
Great. With that, we'll go to Ms. Hurt. Ms. Schneider, is your hand up as well?
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I guess you kind of kicked it off by talking about the work that we're doing at the Air District. I do represent all the cities, and on the board with Supervisor Canepa and Groom, we've really tried to prioritize equity and investments in the community when it comes to the air filtration system. And so we're excited that we got the $100,000 grant. And as was explained, it'll buy so many units. I also chair one of the committees, and I kind of had my ear to the ground, and I heard of some extra units that were on the side, and I raised my hand for our cities, and we were able to get some for Millbrae, for Mayor Schneider, because of San Francisco Airport, and just thinking about that stationary source affecting low-income communities as well as seniors and those with asthma. So that's also in addition to the $100,000 grant. Also found some for those affected by Highway 101 that are in Menlo Park in the Bellhaven community, the seniors. And there were also a few units that we were able to get that we're going to work for, Bayview, Hunters Point, and then also schools. So there is a lot of clean air filtration systems coming to the county. And I think because we are trying to look at it with an equity lens at first, trying to use that first tier of thinking about who really needs it, who's most impacted. I'm also thinking about like farm workers on the coast when it comes to outdoor wildfire air that they're in all day and what their homes are at night. So we are really working hard and using tools like the Cal Enviro screen, which is an imperfect tool, but it is one. And maybe that's something we want to look at when we try to decide how we divvy out the air filtration systems, but it is a starting point. And so that is on. We're also at the Air District working on clean air centers, and there's going to be a program that's coming from CARB. It's taken a little bit of a more detailed look into because of COVID and how we figure out how to do that safely, but there is money for clean air centers that will be coming, as well as a school program that we're applying at the US EPA, as well as CARB. So there's much going on, and I'm happy to speak to cities just one-on-one or in a group about some more of the details, but Supervisor Canepa, Grimm, and I are on the task.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Hurt. Ms. Espinosa.
Hi. So I hear from y'all that we have 60 units that serve larger than houses. So where are they being prioritized right now? Are they? Is there an idea of where they're going to be at? Like, are we thinking of hospitals, schools, libraries, such and such? And like, as Councilmember Hurt was saying, is there anything to say about the equity component of where the distributions will be?
Well, just what was mentioned before, we will be collaborating with the cities and the Emergency Managers Association, and we will be trying to seek out those communities that are most impacted, as was mentioned. And so generally it might be centers where people might go when there's a PSPS event, so they can collaborate in one area with, hot, dry air, dirty air, and go get fresh air. So that hopefully they would be in locations where people are most impacted that don't have access to those things first. And then of course, those that have compromised lungs or health issues. So we think those will be the priorities first. going forward. But it's yet to be determined, but we're certainly trying to fill those needs with what we have.
And if I can interrupt with another question, is that okay? Thank you. I was just curious if this doesn't, I was wondering if there's also something that we're looking at to help folks at home. Like in Redwood City, we suggested, the councilman suggested that we do teach-ins on how to make your own air filters. I wonder if there's just some efforts to do that, because we know that we can't distribute air purifiers to everyone, but I'm just curious if there's other creative ways that we are collaborating with jurisdictions to make air pure.
We did talk about that in this office. Actually, I think it was Monday. And if we could get access to a grant, it's possible that we could buy some basically inexpensive fans by putting a HEPA filter on one side. These are the ones that were referred to, where you can make them pretty inexpensively, probably less than $50. So if we could secure a grant, that might be a way for us to build those and then distribute them to single family dwellings where there might be a number of people living in them that have compromised air. So that's on the radar. So I think what you just said is a great idea. And if we can do it with some grant money, we certainly will give it a shot.
Thank you so much.
Are there any additional questions or comments? You know, Dan, I think it's going to be quite important I think the Cal Enviro screen tool, I think is really going to be important for us in terms of, decision making. So I would just encourage maybe staff to work with Ms. Hurd and perhaps the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to really understand, or to ascertain or to get the data. I think that would be a tool that we could all benefit from. Ms. Schneider. You're on mute.
Very grateful for Director Hurt for getting 70 home units, recognizing that Millbrae does not qualify under Cal Enviro screen. However, we have not just the airport, and most of what we are impacted by, aside from the fires, are 7 different transportation contributors to particulate and other air pollution. And that is not recognized in the Cal Enviro screen. So I'm working on that in any way I can. And then we have an added complication that the Air Resources Board only handles source contributors. I've got to get back into my vocabulary. Most of what we have is non-point source, which means that we have to deal with the US EPA. So I've already reached out to Region 9, but we're going to be, I guess, a beta test for the North. And for all the new members, it's been 3 years since the campfire, where basically visibility up here in North County was maybe 10 feet on that. And yet there are no air monitors up here. Daly City was the first city to hand out N95 masks. And because there's no monitors, there's no data. But the theory is, depending on wind conditions and fires, North County is a little basically amphitheater, and particulate matter is building up here. And someday it would be lovely to have testing equipment so we actually have proof of that, but maybe we'll never have those fires again. But that's the theory that I'm working on up here in North County. So it affects San Bruno, Daly City, Colma, South San Francisco.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Schneider. Mr. Belleville, is there anything else to report out?
No, sir, that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for really listing those items and really, providing some great information to the board. So that brings us to our next item, which is the informational update from the Emergency Managers Association. Ms. Gunny.
Thank you, Supervisor Canepa and Honorable Emergency Services Council members. It's a pleasure to be here this evening as your newly elected president for the Emergency Managers Association. I'm going to be brief this evening. I'm going to talk about the updates for our working groups. We currently have 5 working groups, our community resilience and volunteer management, and I won't need to touch on that. Pat did that so eloquently with our DSW VP program. So that's what we've been working on with that particular working group. Our mass care group continues to work on sheltering issues and intake forms and things regarding shelters. Our planning and operational coordination Again, with all of the things that we've been working on between Zone Haven and the different plans, and I don't need to go into detail with between our local hazard mitigation and our disaster debris management. That has all been part of our planning and operational coordination. And technology, what we've done is we've merged two of our working groups together. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight is with our alert and warning and our web EOC. We have converged that into technology. So our alerting system, alert and warning, is now coupled with our crisis management. So that is really the technology that, the new technology that we're utilizing. And that is what I'll mainly discuss this evening. And then our training and exercise work group, which we are working on our Golden Eagle exercise that will be coming up on November 3rd that we'll be participating in. That being said, next slide. Great, thank you. So I just want to acknowledge the members for our technology working group. We have Ken Anderson, South City Fire, Jeff Arith from the San Francisco Airport, Michelle Durand, our San Mateo County Communications, myself, Pat Halloran, San Mateo Consolidated Fire, Emma Hunter, San Mateo County Public Health, and Jeff Norris from San Mateo County DEM. We have been working diligently since June of this year for the alert and warning platform. Our SMC alert, our Everbridge contract is coming to an end, needed to revise it. So we spent a lot of time reviewing and evaluating our request for proposals and demonstrations for the alert and warning vendors. And then now the state has stepped in and is going to provide Everbridge as our alert and warning platform for the entire state. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with that, but we're very fortunate in the long run that is going to benefit all of us. So what we are now working on is we shift and have done over the last several months is the review of the 2019 Cal OES guidance for alert and warning to work on not only locally, but regionally to develop alert and warning guidance for the county. So we have taken a lot of the other plans regionally to take a look at what's going to best fit for us in developing that plan, as well as creating a quick start user guide and standardizing training for all of the users. So it's different in our different jurisdictions, who has the capability to send the alerts, but we want to make sure that we're standardizing that training and that we're consistent in the language as well. So we'll be working on translation of messages and the creation of priority messages so that we can send messaging out more efficiently and quickly when something happens. And that, I think, is one of the most important parts and connectivity pieces as we talk about Zone Haven, because we have that capability in Zone Haven to send out those alerts based on the zones. So the two platforms actually talk to each other on the back end. So we can actually send alerts via the Zone Haven platform, which will streamline that. And we've already seen the benefits of that through the CZU fire. The other side of that is the crisis management software. What most of us know is web EOC. And so that will be our next project in the technology working group is looking at evaluating our crisis management software. It seems like all these things kind of came to a head at the same time that we're working on all these different plans, but really want to make sure that we've got alerter training in place, that we're standardizing the messaging, and that we're consistent in that messaging across the board, whether it's through our alert and warning platform or even through our different media channels, whether that be social media or our public service announcements and things like that. So really getting the word out to increase the subscribers for the alert system. And I think we're actually one of the highest counties in the state for subscribers to the alert system. So something else I think that we should be very proud of here in San Mateo County. And let's see, I think that is it. If anybody has any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Gunning?
So what we'll be doing was, this is just an introduction. For this, what we will do is bring the plan and the guidance to the Emergency Services Council in January for the adoption of that plan. So we will be working on that for you come January.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Are there any questions from the board members? All right, thank you very much. That moves us on to announcements from members of the council. Are there any announcements from the members? Okay. All right, so that brings us to the next meeting. And I thank you for the slide deck. It's next meeting is January 20th, 2022. And with that, I want everyone to stay safe, and we're nearing a weekend. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you, everyone.